prevention. And also it's good always to know what kind of injuries we do get. Because I can testify that there are some coaches, maybe sometimes they don't understand the wording. So I'm going to define some of the wording which we use in medical fraternity. So the topic today is about latest trends in rugby union injuries and the prevention. The objective of this webinar is to present the rugby stakeholders on the latest injury trends so that people understand what are they and what is on the current in 2020, what we have been getting in terms of injury. Number two is to highlight the incidences, severities, the nature of injuries sustained during rugby union training and matches. We want also to see how we can implement effective injury prevention strategies during our training and during the matches or competition. Also is to emphasize that to follow the protocols, also to use the definitions and the procedures recommended in the concession statement for the neurological studies in rugby union. So we want more people to understand, and also we want actually coaches now to start assisting us in the medical fraternity to come up with research, because I think there's a lot of research which the coaches can get involved into. Yeah. More so, what I'm going to talk about how we can incorporate about education and like effective tackling technique, running to space, and all that. I think there is a big gap where we can still discuss on injuries and how we can be able to prevent them. So some of the terms we use when we are describing injuries, and I always love that coaches also understand this kind of terms, so that whenever they hear something, they are able at least to know this is what the physio, this is what my medical team are thinking of. So we always talk about the injury prevalence. Injury prevalence, like in a population of rugby players, like if we say about Kenya Cup, all the Kenya Cup clubs, if we can look on the number of injuries in that kind of population, which is defined, is where we can get the word, the injury prevalence. So at least when you hear about the injury prevalence, somebody is talking about injury prevalence in rugby, in maybe the Kenya Rugby or in the Kenya Cup, at least now you understand he's talking about injury prevalence. Then there is injury incidence, which is the number of injuries sustained. Most of the time in consensus statements is per 1,000 playing hours. Okay. Then there is injury severity, which we can classify under the absence, the time lost on when you are away from training. If one of your players gets an injury, the amount of time he lost, and also the total time lost, it can be in days or it can be in total hours. So you can divide it into two, yeah? Then there is the severity, the number of days taken to treat and rehabilitate an injured player. So sometimes if I say something is not severe, then there is it's going to do a rehabilitation or physio or for a shorter time of period. And if we are talking of a severe injury, then it means it's going to spend more time out. So at least somebody, if you are the coach and your medic is talking about the injury is very severe or is moderate, then you know this thing is going to take more time for this player to return to play or to return to training as compared to the other. Then there is injury type and the nature. So injury type, we always call it the injury risk by tissue type. So we can always say a sprain. So sprain is an injury type for which kind of tissue? It's like for the ligaments, okay? Where we call the strain is for the muscle. So that's a kind of different. And the rupture, you can see the rupture is more of the tendons. Very rarely we get muscle rupture. But some time back, we used to define hamstring ruptures, but now still they fall under the criteria of strains. Then also the nature, it can be acute, chronic, and the chronic, most of the time we say it is recurrent. If somebody has been having like an ankle sprain, which is fresh, he just sprained it today, then we know that's an acute case. But if you hear that something is chronic, it means this guy has been, he sprained his ankle and he's actually been strapping it and he's been playing with it for a long period of time. So that also the medical team and the management team, they know maybe this guy needs to be taken care of in terms of rehabilitation and all that. Injury location, the injury risk by main body location. So if we say the injury location is on the shoulder, the knee, and all that, so I'll be talking on all that. It's good to define this kind of words. Then the injury mechanism, how did it happen? What was the insightful activity which led to the injury? So I'll be talking about tackling, tackle, learning, and all that kind of words. So what are we looking on the output measures? We'll be looking on the playing position, yeah, that's the group incidence, injury per 1,000 playing hours, injury severity, the location and the type, and the mechanism, which I've already talked about on top. So the time loss on match injuries in 15 format, what have we seen in the current research? We have seen that the incidence is about 90.1 match injuries per 1,000 hours, okay? That's the mean. But for during the games, so during the games, we are getting up to 90 injuries as a mean. But for the backs, we are getting more injuries. You can see it's 100.4, the bracket, and the forwards is 81.1 within their 1,000 hours they have played. So you can see that there is a high risk of injuries in your back line as compared to your forward. So that, where does that read for me to? It reads to me that there is a lot of demand, like when you are planning for your pre-season and off-season planning, that you need to consider your backs, that your backs, they don't need just to come into the season without proper condition, because there is a lot of demand. So it will also assist you that to know which are the vulnerable group in when you are planning. So if you see your backs are missing more training, for me as a coach, I might actually even be able to deny them playing time because maybe they are not fit, and as unlike the forwards. So that's one of the things we can depict from there. So there's a lot of demand in terms of what we need to do on the backs as compared to what we need to do on the forwards. Then on training injuries, when they train, we have seen backs is 0.9 to forwards 1.2. It now shows that during training, now the injury is actually now turned the other way around, where the forwards are getting more injuries compared to the back line. And that's something maybe we can discuss when we finish. The coaches can also give us an insight of the trends. Do the backs really train, or is only the forwards who put a lot of work at training? And I think, like, because this is a 15 format, I know the forwards carry a lot of the ball. Maybe that can explain that, while the backs are involved in running some playing patterns and all that, so they don't really get into too much contact. Maybe that can explain, but also it needs to be explored why we are getting back injuries which are less as compared to forwards. But I know there is a lot of training contact which are actually undergoes through the forwards, because they do scrums, this is 15, and I think they do rack, and the majority of the racks for the forwards is very live, while the backline are actually running the move. So we can always go through that. There is something we call the mean severity of injuries. We got that average. Everyone who got an injury was going out for 29 days. And this current studies, like from World Rugby, what's happening in general 15 format. So it's not based to the local, which we can compare maybe in future. So we can see the backs actually, when a back gets injured, it can go out for up to 30 days, while the forwards will go to 29 days. So there's no big difference. So it means if you get an injury, if you are a back or you are forward, it's the same thing. So you are going to stay out until your injury recovers. So there was no major difference. During the matches, 14.9 days absence. So you can see, if they train and they get an injury, during training, you can see the forwards are taking more time to recover as compared to the back line. So I think that can also go to the first, if you can see there, where the forwards are getting more injuries for 1.2 there during training, it might interpret maybe their injuries are more severe because there is a lot of workload, which they do. Okay, then we wanted to compare it with what's happening in the 15th, in the 7th format for men and women. So for World Rugby 7 series, there has been 122 injuries per 1,000 playing hours. If you can compare that with what we just talked about here on top, there is less. You can see this is 90.1 for 15th format, while this is 122. So there is high trends that the 7th format, it is, has a lot of high injury risk, and there's high injury incidences which have been reported. So that for coaching, maybe let me touch it. For coaching, who are coaching actually, like Sudi, I think, and Extra, they do 7s. They do both 7s and 15s. Maybe by August, you guys will switch to 7s. So what does it entail for you guys now? It actually shows you that without proper pre-season conditioning for the 7s guys, it's not normal as the same as for 15s. They are going actually to report more injury rate. So that means I've always seen people after the 15th season, they chill around, then they have like 4 weeks, 3 weeks, then they are into 7s. And that can explain what's happening. That's why we are getting a lot of injury incidences during the 7th period. And I think you guys, if you have been monitoring, you get so many injuries actually within that period of August to September, that there is so many injuries for the 7th guys. Everyone is getting an injury, even if he even didn't get an injury during the 15th season. So it depends that the pre-season for 7s, maybe the preparation is too little. So the clubs maybe needs to consider if you guys need to rest from May and April, if the season is end, then you pick your squad for the 7s, then you start maybe as early as somewhere in June. Then let's start conditioning properly so that by the time we get to the first series, which is maybe the first week of August or the last week of July, guys are getting somewhere. So because I think people want just to play 7s anytime they want, but there's a high risk of injuries from the trends which we have seen. So in terms of conditioning, that also I think is a calling point for the coaches to consider for the 7s, which is going on. For the women's, we have also seen there's around 100 injuries per 1,000 playing hours, which is a bit less to the men's 7s format, but still you can see it's as compared to 15 still is higher. So generally, that's why World Rugby has come up, when they consider 15 and 7s, they have come up to see that 7s has more injury incidences. So that's why every team now there's more conditioning, there's more preparation needed for the 7th kind of game as compared to the 15th kind of game. So that maybe you can put it in mind. So in generally, you can see the senior, like if we go to the Super Rugby, what's happening in Europe, and also the Super Rugby, where the senior men, there's professional rugby, there is average of 80 to 100 injuries, which is a bit same to the 15th format, which you saw is around 80 per 1,000 hours. So the 15th format is like the injuries have the same curve. So then if you compare it to the professional football, what's happening like in the Premier League, there is only 25 to 30 injuries. You can see how little it is playing hours, because it is a contact game. Football is a contact game, but not that too much contact. And I think the injuries they get, the recovery rate is also very high, unless it's ligamentous injuries like the knee and the shoulder and all that kind of stuff. So you can see the rugby has a high incidence rate of injuries as compared to what we have in the professional football. So you will never compare. If guys are doing like a warm-up for touch football, the risk also is less. So you can always incorporate those kind of games when you are doing your pre-season conditioning and all that, even your warm-ups, because also the risk for football is less. So what are the most common locations and types of injuries which have been recorded generally? This is in both 7s and 15s format. So during the matches, they have had a lot of head and face. This can be lacerations. Lacerations, just minor cuts. But out of this 22% we got that concussion was the reading. It had around 15.7%, which was reading people to lose up to 196 days. Those are combined together. So there was a lot of days lost for the players who had concussions. Then we had what we call the knees. We had the knees, which is at 16.2, and the muscle strains at 23.1, and the ligament strains at 23.1. So if you look at during the matches, if you look on those percentages, we are getting more ligament and the muscle strains as one of the main components of the injuries we are sustaining. What does that indicate for the coaches and the conditioning, strength and conditioning department, and even the physios? It means that the soft tissues needs to be taken care of. Ligaments and the muscle strains mostly occur if there is no proper pre-rehabilitation and the proper stretching, which is part of the warm-up and the cool-down part of it. So that indicates that there is a lot of work which needs to be done in pre-rehabilitation. I think the SLC incorporate all that before the games. So if you can do proper prevention methods like stretching, warm-ups, and pre-rehabilitation exercises, there is high chances that you might take away the muscle strains and the ligament strains, which are actually composes the majority of the injuries we are getting. Then the knees are happening. We'll discuss why the knees are happening and why the face are happening and what needs to be done. These 16 and 22%. During training, what are we getting? During training, we are getting muscle strains at 60%. And from my research, I came to realize maybe during training, not so many guys actually take it serious in terms of proper warm-ups, proper rehabilitations. Even the coaches and the SLCs and the physios, we don't really take it serious because it's not a match. So there is reluctance on, guys, have you warmed up? Then you hit the training. So we need to take it serious on the same way we do a proper warm-up. During on a match day, I've monitored some of the coaches. They are very strict on the warm-up and the timeline, which needs to be done the warm-up. So I think that thing needs to come back to in what we do in the training, okay? Like one of the things I see, during match day, the post pads are put on the podium. But during the training, nobody even considers putting the post pad. So those are the things we need to adjust so that we take it serious. Then you can see from here, we have ankle ligaments, which is leading to 122 days. Then there is MCLs. MCLs is on the knee, which is around 198. See the hamstring strains, 699, okay? See the shoulder dislocation, 321. So if you can see the ACLs, obvious because they take more time for return to play. That's why they have a lot of number of absence. So we should be able to avoid the lower injuries like on the knees and the shoulders, which has a high number of time and hamstrings. So the three we need to take care of it because it takes quite a lot of time, plus a bit of Achilles, which usually doesn't happen. So, but we need to take care of the ACL, the hamstring, and the shoulder. And that leads us to warm up, proper precision conditioning, rehabs, and all that. And let's go to this. Some of this data is courtesy of Corinne Fuller and Taylor, who were doing some research with the World Rugby. We looked on the praying positions. We have seen the incidences per 1,000 hours. We have seen the backs had around 100.4. You can see 100.4 injuries. These are the backs. Okay? And they are mean. Let me talk about the halves. So these half backs, 93. This is the inside backs, 125. And I'm going to interpret it. Then the outside back at 88. Let's deal with the backs first. You can see the backs are getting 100. Go to the forwards are getting 81. So these are all match praying injuries. So it means the forwards are getting less injuries as compared to forwards, as compared to the backs, which we have already talked on the first slide there, up there. But what happens now when we subdivide them? If you look at your inside backs are at 125. This is nearly the same rate for the sevens. If you saw the sevens was at 122, actually it's much higher. So that means if you are a coach, what does it implicate? If you are a coach and you have your back line and you have decided you are 9 and 10, and then you are inside backs and you are outside backs. So one of the things actually we are encouraging from the research which has coined that we need actually to specify positions. You don't want somebody who hasn't been playing as an inside back to be exposed in that position. And I think these things happen here in Kenya, where you get somebody who is a winger, most of the time you convert him to a center. And I don't think it's going to last that season to give you what you need from it. So that's why even when they are being trained, the positional roles and in terms of condition, we need to look into too much into it that these guys who are inside backs, are they conditioned properly because they are exposed to more injuries as compared to the other players? And when you want to change as a coach, does it implicate to you that when I want to change someone, let's give an example. What kind of centers do we have? Like for homeboys, we have Jeff and Wells. We have another winger like Bush, or who else? Who is another winger? Shikori maybe coming to play your center maybe because of an injury. So sometimes I'll actually even bring another center from the bench to cover that than bringing your outside back to cover the inside back if it's an injury. So that's something we can always debate and maybe implement with time in future so that there is more proper positional role, because also from the research, it has shown that there is quite a high incidences at the inside backs. Then on the forwards, there was no much differences in terms of the injuries we are getting from them. You can see front row, they are at 80, second rows at 74, a bit lower, and the back rows were higher, a bit higher, because I think the guys who play 15s, they understand what the kind of work the back rows are doing. You can see at 85, which means the incidences was higher. Then the number of days they were out, if a forward got injured is 29, if a back got injured is 30, which didn't have any significant. That's the average down here. It didn't have a significance. So, but here there is a very big difference on the backs and forward. So we need to put more work on the backs in terms of making sure that they are conditioning properly. And at the same time, one of the things I can maybe depict for the coaches there from this data is to make sure that some of the positions we don't really change. And I think there's a rule for 15s for the scrums in terms of the numbers and who should be able to play maybe a hooker or something. I haven't really gone into detail to understand it. But I think this data can give us something out of it. Let's go to the mechanism of injury. This is something which is leading an injury to happen. So from the World Rugby, whatever research they have carried out from 2007 all the way to 2020, what we are seeing there, actually this data ends until 2019, the last season. We are yet to receive the 2019 World Cup. We see how the data has changed, and also the last series for sevens. But this is all the way what has been happening. So being tackled was one of the biggest, most inciting events. Being tackled, how people are being tackled was 24.7. And the rugby skill contact, when actually they are doing rugby skills contact, if you are doing a rugby skills contact session, we was reading to 70% of the most common during training. So training, if you are doing non-contact training, then you are getting less injuries. But when you are doing contact training skills, then you are getting more injuries. This for coaches, it depicts that you can actually align your skills planning, what you want to do during the week, so that one day is on a high intensity and the other day is moderate, so that you can depict from contact training and the skills training, so that you don't mix them, so that we know that this day is a contact session and we expect more injuries, so everyone is more prepared. Then when sometimes we do passing, we mix it, we bring a rack, we mix it, so there's something in terms of planning which we can do on that. Then on being tackled, and I'll talk about when also tackling also becomes an issue. From the data there, see, tackling is at, for the backs, 20.5, the injuries they cause. This is in terms of injuries. Then being tackled, backs are getting 31, which forwards are getting 17. It means the back line, when they're running with the ball, the tackles they are receiving are actually injuring them more. Okay, so that's why we need, I think that's why I wanted to talk about techniques in terms of running into space, not running straight, and all that, tackle evasion and all that. Those are some of the techniques I think which needs to be included in this being tackled, so that we can reduce these injuries going down. Tackling, if you can see, still is at higher, so we are getting more injuries from tackling. And I think here from education, in terms of tackling technique and all those things, which I think people fear, and also maintaining the ground. The ground also plays a very big role on how people want to tackle. So if the ground maybe is a better ground, you get a good service when you are doing the tackling technique, so that people get comfortable to tackle and they get used to tackle the right shoulder, when to take it in. So this can come down. So there's a lot of education which needs and skills set from coaches, still demanding. And I think you can agree with me that still we need a lot of work in tackling. And even for our international, for 15s and 7s, we have been seeing a lot of missed tackles and all that, because I think of the technique which we haven't taught. Then running was here because of the backs, and I was thinking it's because maybe the backs are having a lot of running, so they are likely to get injuries like hamstring strains and all that. Then another thing we saw is collisions, and it was mostly pronounced on the backs. I think it's from the running. So the only thing from here I depicted which we can do on the running, proper warm-up should be able to be done because everyone is going to be explosive. Then 24 and 21 there. So being tackling, that's where the mechanism comes, very big. So this is where the coaches now can come in And I'll talk about some of the things which maybe I feel the coaches need to tackle from this side. And the highest injury burden, the burden we have been having in rugby at the moment is the knee ligaments, where we have 53% of all the injuries are coming from the knee. And the mechanism reading it is being tackled, okay? And the ligament which we have been having an issue with is the ACL. And if you look on the first slide, ACL is giving you over 1,000 hours, nearly 1,000 hours loss of playing time. So we don't want that. Then shoulders, we got there at 52%, and all of the injuries came from tackling. And the AC joint was one of the main. The AC joint just seated on top here. So I think the tackling, or whenever they are tackling, they are getting that AC joint. Very few guys who are getting the rotator cuff tears. So 52. So tackling and tackle still is causing some of our injuries for the knee and the shoulder, and we need to address it. So in terms of addressing it, I don't know if it's the tackle technique which the guys are going to work more on, and running into space, those kind of things. I think we'll talk them out. So for me, I have noted the main points: tackling technique, then tackle inversion, and run into space. Some of the things I think we are also struggling. I think Hector can testify that even our sevens, we are a bit struggling in some of those things. So I think if we can be able to address it more and more, we are able to tell these young gentlemen who are playing rugby that this thing can be done this way, and to improve them more. Because everyone, even if he has a ball, he still wants to run into another player and attacking that space. So that increases this risk which we are seeing up here. Then head injuries. What's happening at the moment in terms of head injuries? Concussion actually, since 2007, if you look on the graph, there were no concussion being reported. So the graph has actually been going up all the way. So when the Corinne Full and Taylor guys who are working with the World Rugby, they decided to do a lot of work into it and know why. So they have seen that the rise of number of reported concussions at all levels of rugby over the first 5 years has risen, and is more likely to be because of the reported cases. Initially, nobody used to report a concussion. Maybe somebody gets a knock in 2010, nobody reports, that's just a tackle. The life moves on. But nowadays, everyone is more aware. So if you get a concussion, people are more likely to see it and even to be able to report it. So you can see there is a lot of the things they came up is that there is a lot of education around it. There's a lot of training going on. There's stricter protocols, which is like HIA, which we are doing nowadays. So these things and the assessment, diagnosis, and management in concussion has made it to be more reported. So they don't think that the head injuries are maybe too much, but why they seem to be too much is because people have known about them. So people know about all these things, so they are likely to be reported, even though they are less. So that still leads us to education, training, making stricter protocols for your club that somebody has to do HIA1, HIA2. People need to sit out during that period of 2 weeks, which is minimum, before the graduated return to play. Protocols put into place with the physio, SLC, and the coach clearing that player to be able to start playing. Then conclusion from rugby studies. The incidence, the nature, and the inciting events, which is the mechanism of events, have been associated with match injuries in Rugby World Cup 2015 were similar to those reported in the previous Rugby World Cups. So whatever occasions wherever the locations, the nature, the inciting events, all of them, they have been similar. They haven't changed since 2007 and what happened in 2015. So we are yet to receive what happened actually in 2015 World Cup. But otherwise, there is no different trend. Then the only thing which they have seen there were increasing trends in the mean severity and total number of days the injuries has happened. So maybe the reporting in 2007 was how long did you stay out of rugby was not that properly reported. Nowadays, we are able to report how long somebody is able to stay out. If it's 3 months, we are able to monitor that and it's recorded. So maybe that's another attribute. But the reality is that the severity of injuries has been actually being severe from if somebody got an hamstring injury in 2009, when I think the Sudis used to play, if Sudi got an injury in 2009, how long you stayed out compared to if somebody got an injury in 2018, how long you stayed out, you might have actually played by then with that injury within a very short of time of period as compared to what's happened nowadays. So I think maybe it's because of stricter guidelines. Then there was no guidelines like you need to stay this, you need to do this before return to play, you need to condition properly, react properly before you move to play. So maybe that's something which has changed. And also in terms of education, physios are coming in. All clubs have physios now. More things are being implemented than somebody coming back to play without adequate rehabilitation. Then one of the things I came up with, this is a model which is on, which has been came in. There's this guy called Van Mechelen. He came up with an injury prevention model, which every club maybe should be able to implement. All the organizations which are into sports. So number one, before you think of you putting your proper warm up, adequate conditioning, putting in proper stretching, proper hydration, proper nutrition, and all that, you need to go through a sequence and identify what's happening in your club. So if you talk of a club, let's establish the extent of the injuries. What kind of injuries do we get? What is the incidences? How many hamstrings do we get? How severe are they? Are they grade 1, they grade 2? Then we identify this is our problem. That's number one. So if it's Harlequins, for example, we identify that Harlequins, we are getting a lot of knee injuries. Or, that's examples. Or we are getting a lot of hamstring injuries. And this is the number. Okay? Then what do? We establish the etiology. What might be the cause? What are the mechanisms? When do they get this kind of injuries? Do they run, explosive, and all those kind of things? Then that's when they get. That's number two. Then number three, you introduce something. If it's proper conditioning you want to for your knee injuries, proper pre-rehabilitation and rehabilitation protocol, even for the guys who are not injured. They need to get into an SLC who is doing all these things every day. Then you introduce a preventative measure. Like right now we say adequate pre-rehabilitation and rehabilitation should be introduced. Okay. If it's soft tissue injuries you are getting, let's introduce proper warm-up and the proper pre-rehabilitation exercises before a match. Okay. Then now we implement in number 4. As you have introduced the number 3, you do it throughout. Then number 4, you assess. This is stage 4. You assess if the pre-rehabilitation, has it given you anything? The proper conditioning, has it given you anything? Proper warm-ups, has it given you anything? If it has given you anything, then now you implement. If it's not giving you anything, then the sequence again comes back. So you have to come back and establish the extent of the injury again. Then again go through it until you get the thing which is sorting out your problem. So it's good to use this for your own good so that you know this is what we want to do as a club or as a physio or as a medical team for a certain club. Okay? So I'll share with you this so that everyone can be able to get it. Then injury prevention strategies. These are some of the strategies which have been discussed and passed by majority of the bodies from football to rugby, FIFA, and World Rugby. So adequate rehabilitation. Make sure your players, whenever they get injuries, before they return, make sure that they are getting adequate rehabilitation. Okay. Then there is adequate recuperation period. Majority of the time, we are training so much. Maybe make sure that how many times do you want to train in a week, and how do you give the rest in between, which is very crucial. Between, if you have matches this weekend, you are playing non-this, next weekend you are playing homeboys. How do you want to train? Do you just want to train because you want to say we trained on Tuesday, we trained on that? Yeah. If you played a match on Saturday and you are playing another match on Saturday, if guys enough rest, maybe on Monday start. It's not a must that we have to do a contact training. Yeah? We can do a lot of rehabilitation exercises, some biometric exercises and all that as we progress them to get to somewhere. Then warm-ups. Research has shown that a proper, adequate warm-up should not be less than 25 good minutes. So you can do more than 25, but not less than 25 minutes. That's what scientific research has shown. Then you have to include your dynamic and the sustained. People are not educated. Some of them are doing sustained, which has not shown that it's good for pre-match or pre-training time. So the dynamic, you have to involve it. So that is one of the key things you are doing before any training or before any match. Then tapping and pressing. It's always good to, like some of the rigs, like basketball, nowadays you can't be able to play, even if you are not injured, without a tape on your ankle. So we need to impress all these things. Huh? So if people have to tape, they have to tape. And I think you have seen, if you were watching World Rugby Cup, if you saw those pictures for Springbok, how many guys taped, how much they were taped. Yeah. You could see Colicia and the rest, a lot of taping. So if you have to do that, in terms mostly when you are in a competition period, well and good, as long as you are able to prevent any further injury. Then the protective equipment, still we are lagging behind that. Everyone needs to use a mouth guard, but very few guys. And I think it's education. And I have some cases like in the sevens team, some guys who will never tell you that we never use a mouth guard. But after introduction, maybe they were a bit cheaper. We introduced them. We introduced some guy who was giving them even to the clubs. 1, 2, 3. I can tell you, like people like Alvin Otieno, Jeffrey Okwach, who else is this guy? Even Collins. People have never thought of using mouth guard. Nowadays they are using comfortably, and even he can't go to training without asking, where's my mouth? So it's all about perception and education and introducing them for them. Okay. So then the prehab exercises. I have attached a very good video here. When I share, you can watch it through. It has a lot of proper rehabilitation exercises, which from rugby, football, they are able to use. And they are very key. If you are able to do it you introduce within your team, I can assure you that they are going to give you a difference. Then appropriate training. Appropriate training, like what needs to be taught. Like one of the things we need to do in appropriate training is the skill set, introduce it properly, make sure that wherever they are training also is good. That's why I've said about environmental factors. Our fields are bad, and you can see some of the guys have picked the thing that they are not able to tackle. It's maybe because they are not used to tackle with the kind of services we have been So you can always organize when you want a tackling session and a rack session to be done. Make sure your team manager maybe organizes. Maybe you are able to get the ground is much better. You have to decide and when you are doing this so that at least you get the top out of it. Suitable equipment, make sure that everything you are using, make sure that they are suitable. Sometimes we are doing passing technique and the balls are bad. The balls have been used, yeah? They are like pumpkins. Then still you want to get the best technique out of it of passing, which you never get. And I think we are doing those things, even in very high setups where you get still people are not intending to change the balls to make sure that people have new ones. Then you will teach, as a coach, you will teach forever. Somebody is never passing, but it's because something is there and people are not maybe assuming it, and it's something which is causing all that. The cool down, people are always overlooking the cool down. Research has shown that after every training, after every match, you should at least do a cool down of not less than 10 minutes and above. So that one can include people cycling, start the bike, and after that, people going down to stretch. If there is no static bike, run around to cool down the muscles, then do a proper static stretches. And I think more people are getting there. But sometimes after winning, people get carried away, then they don't do that. They know that winning today, people want still to win tomorrow. People will forget about winning what you won the other day. The people want new thing tomorrow. So those are things we should not actually overlook. Then psychology, people are being introduced. Like right now, I think clubs should get into the players. We don't know what the players are doing now with this COVID thing. So that's a very key area, which sometimes is overlooked because I think also it needs money, like how to get a sports psychologist on board. But it's good to talk to this young gentleman once and for all. Because one of the another factor I can relate with psychology is like if a club is relegated, let's say a club is relegated to a lower division, and one of the players who has been doing proper warm-ups, proper cool-downs, and is always gymming, continuous, is always conditioning properly. When he goes to a lower division, because of that kind of environment, he thinks maybe the competition level is less and all that. Now they start not doing those protocols properly. Maybe they overlook them. Then they lead to a lot of injury. So we are not preventing the injuries anymore. So other factors to consider: pre-participation examination and screening, PPPE. So it's always to do a proper pre-participation examination. If you get to, for your 7th or your 15th program, let's get, you are coaching, you can do your part, what you are looking at, what the players are able to do, what like the techniques, if they are not able to, you always watch them. You know, this guy can tackle this way, this guy can pass, all those things, put them together. And then the physio and the medical are going to do their screening, their side. They know this is the issues. This guy has tight hamstrings. Maybe he has undergone a surgery before. So these are the things we are going to work around. But that's the only way you are able to prevent some of the injuries. Muscle strength and power, the conditioning part should always not be undermined. The flexibility in terms of getting the range of motion and the skill level. Always upgrade. Everyone wants to be upgraded in terms of the skill. We need to take the skill high. Then the health history of previous injury. It's always good to know what are as this player, even you as a coach, you need to understand what has this coach player has had before. Because sometimes maybe as a coach, because you are coaching, you just have your expectations. But the physio maybe knows this guy has ever had this. So your expectation might be undermined or may not be achieved because maybe you didn't have, even you dropped that player from the team, maybe somebody who needed a bit of a push in terms of rehabilitation, conditioning, and more time to give you what you need. So it's always good to have that kind of history as coaching, not even from the physio perspective, because we expect the physios and the medical to have that. But it's also the coach to know that. The age, also the age of the player. Some of the young guys, the technique is bad. And another part, so you need to put more effort into that in terms of maybe educating them more and more if they are younger. And also in terms of injury prevention, if you have older players in your team, know that their warm-ups needs to be longer, their conditioning needs to be taken care of so that you minimize the injuries. So that's where it goes to older and the younger. Gender, we have seen always female. I know some of the guys here might be coaching ladies, so they tend to have more injuries, so we need to take care of them. Ethnicity, yeah. Ethnicity is mostly, this is in terms of, there's a research which was done, mostly was done on hamstrings, and they got that players of like islanders origin, they had very low, they had a high incidence of hamstrings. So that's why I think it's also associated with the bloods. So those kind of players in that bracket, they have a high injury risk of hamstrings. So for you, if you are dealing maybe with a white person and the players of islanders, or maybe some few players also from the black community, so you have to take care of their hamstring flexibility more as compared to the other players. So that's where it comes from. Also genetics, some guys are always good in terms of genetics for sports. So genetics also play a very big role in terms of injury prevention. So I'm giving an example. An example for soft tissue, which is ligaments, tendons, muscles. One of the main things you can do to prevent much of it is to do a regular proper dynamic warm-up of 25 to 30 minutes or higher. Then prehab exercises incorporated into gym, field, and conditioning. Then there is regular cool downs, which is static stretches, bike jogs, and 10 to 15 minutes. If you incorporate that consistently, then the soft tissue injuries are actually going to go less in your setup. That's an example. So what are my recommendations? There is evidence-based education which we need. If you have to teach someone in terms of tackle technique, we teach them tackle technique from step 1 to step all the way. We just assume people can tackle. All the coaches always assume people can tackle, they tackle. So we need them actually to go through step by step on how to tackle. And it can be done every day. I think any sport, nobody is ever perfect in terms of tackling. Yeah, like a case. It's always good to give an example, like what happened in well, guys who watched LA when we played Scotland. William Barker is one of our best tacklers when he's one-on-one, other than when he's step. But you saw where he put his head. He put the head the other way around. Instead of he rushed to that guy and he's supposed to take him that side. Then he went on the other way around. Then he actually injured his neck. Then we lost him for the next leg. So these are things, even if somebody is perfect, he needs to do it over and over again. So progressive tackle technique, from training to high potential to transfer. You can start simple tackling techniques until you take them to the high potential transfer in terms of tackling. They have also seen that law changes have been proposed. They have actually proposed some law like high tackles and all that. They have changed so that they can see if the tackle is going to reduce a bit of injuries which you are sustaining. You have seen the yellow cards being given for high tackles and all that. Then, but they have seen one of it. If you teach your guy, you educate him, or you teach him on how tackle technique can be done, or you change the law. It's not going to work. The three of them needs to work together. So that's what they have said. The unison between the three can only reduce the tackle injury risk while enhancing the performance, because we have to make sure that rugby is played. It's not ever taking out everything. Still, we need the rugby. Then with the guidance of tackle injury and the performance studies, yeah, as well as a stakeholder engagement, experiential and explorative tackle research, which I think we need to do here in Kenya. Coaches nowadays are doing articles. I think Zudi, Hector, you guys are know down research is being done. Even as a coach at Harry Queens, Homeboys, you can actually do a research per season, what's happening in terms of the injuries which the physio are reporting and the skill set which the players are. Then we sit down with some physios here and there, we do a good article, which might actually improve in terms of rugby injury prevention. Some of the references which you guys can go through, and that's the end of it. We can go through, maybe I'm open for questions and discussion. I think everyone is, let me see if I'm able to see, to mute. Is everyone muted?
What are you asking?
I'm asking,
Yes.
is everyone able to hear, all be able to talk back, or you muted them?
They come in and they mute, but they can unmute. You want a Q&A?
Yeah, we can do a Q&A.
Lamech,
Yeah.
well done, brother. This is great information. Just two things. The first thing, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Two things. The first thing is any way we can get this kind of information to filter down to our school coaches. And the reason I say this is because at Kenya Cup level, we are results driven, unfortunately. Which means by the time a rugby player leaves school and he comes to us, he's straight into the thick of things. And sometimes, and this is just personal experience, I don't have time to teach them about primitive movements. I can't teach them how to roll and crawl and fall and walk, you know? And I found that that's often one of the biggest problems of our injuries when it comes to a senior level, is our guys can't do the normal movements effectively or efficiently. So for me, I've always spoken about getting schools rugby on board. And when it comes to injury prevention, I think the best place to do it is at a school level. Do you think there's somehow we can drive that?
I think if we can do that, because already we are limited, we know that. It's something where I love maybe to talk with Marek. We can, and maybe the likes of John Bosco, I think he's here. We can try and start doing some educational background with some of the players, with some of the coaches and the teachers at high school. But I think at the moment, just to sort out that issue, the clubs needs to have the academy ongoing. Some of the clubs, we are forgetting about the academy. That's why people are jumping into the Kenya Cup street. So as long as you see a good player, as much as maybe still the information is not there on the ground, I think we can still introduce them in the academy even before they play the Elkshire game. So I think it's something we can do. That's why academies are very crucial, so that they can address some of the things which are missing on the ground. But definitely going forward, this is some of the information we want to take down there with the likes.
My last question, Lamech, is the stat you gave us, that's based on World Rugby, right?
Yeah.
So for us coaches now in Kenya, are there any trends you've picked up in Kenyan rugby? I mean, I've only been here for a season now. Are there any trends you've picked up in Kenyan rugby that you could advise us to also look at in terms of injury prevention?
I did, in my master's, I did a research study. Maybe I can just mention it. I have an abstract here. Maybe I can just mention on what we found out. by then. So the research was done on all the clubs. One of the main things we got a total number of injuries were at 520, giving at a prevalence rate of 94.5%. Out of these injuries, the majority were sprains. This is like ankle sprains and all that. So it's more ligaments, which was 17.5. And the muscle strains were at 15%, with more than half of these being mild. So that means around 7.2 of the strains were less. So the majority of the, which is 54.4 of injuries were sustained during the matches. So matches had more injuries as compared to the players sustaining at training. And the majority of the injuries, which was 55.6 of the players, sustained an injury during the second half of the game, maybe of fatigue. So you should be able to look on during match injuries and during second half. Those are the things we were able to depict. And then there were injury, the lower rim was the most injured with 48.7%. So we have still to look on the knee, the ankle, and all that, the lower body. Then there was what we call tackling, and being tackled was the most common injury mechanism. So you can see nearly the trends are nearly the same as what the World Rugby is coming up with. Another thing which we noted is majority of the rugby players never used headgear, mouthguard, and ankle protection at both training and matches. So this is something we can also encourage players to do. Then another thing we saw, there was deficiency in conducting cool down, stretching, flexibility, and strength training, which I think with time now is improving. Another thing which we saw the reasons for not doing all that is lack of time. People are coming from jobs to train in the evening, so the time is less. Lack of proper equipment was one of the issues. There was lack of advice, but nowadays I think with all the clubs having someone there from SLC and the medic, it's improving. Fatigue was one of the things. Maybe people are training at the national level, training at the club level and all that. Some other people were complaining of financial constraints, like some people don't want to put more work done to the clubs, maybe because they are not paid or there is no money resource into it. And the poor facilities, as lack of qualified personnel, was also given the explanation. Another thing which we saw, safety practices, which we, like you have an ambulance, you have a medic, were more followed during competitions and training. So those are the things I think we ever saw from it. So you can see nearly the trends are the same. So we just need now to implement. I'll share with you the other research which we have done in the local so that you can see the injury trends also as compared, but they seem nearly to be showing the same thing. It's only on implementation which is now different, or now we are implementing in the Kenyan setup.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other question?
Yeah, Lamech, good stuff, man. This is fantastic, yeah? You just mentioned in the local game, yeah? You said the injuries were mostly in the second half of the game, Sindio?
Yeah.
Now, to prevent, to reduce that, or to have a positive impact on reducing that, yeah? Which recovery is the best? To space out the games, or to have more recovery during the week?
I think what we have done, even spacing up the game is not going to really help. So what we want is to make sure that people are taking full responsibility in terms of recovery. It's not about finishing a game, then you are partying, then the following day you are at training and all that. But I think one of the main things, which is also always letting down some of the mid all the lower tier teams is the mental toughness, mental conditioning. So you need to incorporate on now when you are training. Sometimes we want these guys to make decisions when they are fatigued. Okay? So whenever they are fatigued, they stop thinking, they miss the tackles, they can even get into a tackling position longly, then they get
stop concentrating.
No concentration. So the mental toughness, and I think it's always good to get someone who talks about the mental toughness and the pitch condition. Those two things, they are very key.
So the prevention.
Chazon, do you have someone who can maybe be introduced to be talking about this mental toughness? I know there are coaches who can take some players through that, as the coaches also do the fatigue pitch condition. We need to, the players, when they say they are tired, that's the right time actually to train them.
To train them, yes.
And they can give us proper decision making. But I think top teams like Manchester United, like some of the Super Rugby, they have a mental toughness coach who does some of those kind of skills, so that they are able to. That's when the team needs you most. It's not when you start, you score 2 tries, then you think the game is done.
Yeah, so you prevent the injury during the week, you see.
Yeah.
So what you do mentally, what you do physically, all of that is what prevents you the injury. It's not like
but the recovery still, you can't rule out the recovery in terms of ice pads, in terms of stretching, and in terms of your pre-rehabilitation exercises. That one still needs to stay. But now when you want to take it to a notch higher, it's about the mental toughness which the players are. And now your pitch conditioning has been done. So still conditioning is part of it. But your mental, very, very key.
Very key, thanks, man. Super.
Physio.
Yeah.
Lamech, this is Mary. Now, I just want to ask two clarifications I seek from you. You talked about taping and bracing. And if I heard you correctly, you said if we have to do it, we have to do it. Now, we need guidelines on this because, for example, if you are coaching, say, 18-year-olds, you're coaching ladies, sometimes you say we don't want to tape them so that they can strengthen those muscles, whether it's ankle or wrist. So what are the guidelines for taping and bracing? That's number one. Then the other thing, you say that according to, I don't know if it's research from Europe or locally, because when you did your paper, you said you did for the clubs, which means I'm not sure if you touched on the women. But anyway, you said women are more prone to injuries, yet on the other side, we know women are more flexible, they're more agile. So if you could just share more information on those two. Thank you.
So, okay, that's good, Mary. Now, I wanted to clear, it's good to clear each taping guidelines. The guidelines actually in terms of taping. Like if you see some guidelines which have been given by the NBA in the USA, they have said that because of a lot of time loss on ankle injuries, and there is a lot of cases, the incidences are too many. All the players need to tape, regardless if they are injured or not injured, just for prevention measures. That's the same thing.
Regardless of age and gender, regardless.
No. For age, I'll always recommend that the younger guys don't strap. They should actually be doing so that they continue strengthening. But also even the senior guys, they should actually not strap if it's more of a game which is not more competitive. It's more of a training and a slow, because always like for sevens, what we do, the coach tells me the sessions which are heavy and the sessions which are light, so that I know today it's going to be a bad day, it's heavy. So anyone who wants to strap will strap. And it's mostly for preventative measures. It's not that you must be able to strap. It's you to choose, but much all of the guys strap. But if it's a green, right training session, then nobody actually even wants to strap. But for the young guys, I always recommend that they need to do good conditioning. Let them get used not to strap unless otherwise, like the under 18s. It's the same thing we are doing with conditioning. We don't want to give them supplementation. We don't want to give them a lot of weights because of adaptation. So for them, actually, they should not actually be strapping unless it's a competition. And maybe it's in a high school level. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes.
And I wanted to talk about the women. Yes. Women, there is something we call the women triad, which actually exposes the women to be more exposed to injuries. Maybe with time we can organize for the people who are coaching women. I talk about the women triad, which is quite big, where you get they are more prone to injuries because of there's some Q angle, there's a lot of what can I say, mechanical issues which are in women, like in the lower body. How do they get the knee injuries and all that? Is because of what we call the women triad, which I think is quite good to explain to maybe coaches who are into women. Something which we need to, but they are always more prone to injuries. Yes, Mary?
I guess what you're saying is probably we can organize together with Malik to organize a session for the coaches who are coaching women for a separate session with them. So that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, that can be done.
Another question?
I have one, maybe just rather like a comment. So Lamech, thanks. This is really good insight. What I want us to, and I think just to piggyback on what Jason was saying, we need to get more local data. Maybe we need to find a way, even if maybe we start with Kenya Cup only, the same way we report Scrum Meet, we report games. Are we able to design templates which are easy to fill, which the physios can be doing, to record all this data on injuries, and I guess once we have that kind of data, it will be more localized to us, and it can help us even build, even at the national team level. You guys can be able to pick this type of information and help shape your season and the teams, both at the club level and international level. So I think it's really good, even what you've done in terms of your research, your thesis. I'm sure now with that kind of info, you can be able to localize something, a template, and we can see how we can start it even for the next season. And I think for me, I'd say it will be a good step. And maybe even look at issuing guidelines for clubs to be able to put in place. Because some of them I know competition in terms of having an ambulance and stuff. But looking at what we're talking about, those type of injuries, how to monitor them, what to put in place, the return to play protocols. If all this can be put in a sort of like we were doing at the Kenya Fitness manual or something, but if you can do a manual on that, because you looks like you've done quite a bit of work on it, I think it will be quite good.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sudi. And I think Dr. Ondiega should be here. He's part of us here. And Dr. Mairu is also here. I think there's a guideline which they have developed. I think we just need to implement it now. It's a high time we start implementing it going forward. I think we'll make it available as soon as possible.
That'll be good.
Yeah.
Thanks. Keep up the good work, man.
No, thank you. Well, someone there? Anyone? Anyone who wants to add something? Marik?
Daktari.
Yeah.
I have another two questions. So you said that when we are doing cool down, you talked about either bike or runs, or okay, say that jog actually.
Yeah.
Now I see some clubs or some teams actually doing quite a bit of running, either to the 22 hard running before the cool down, after a session. So what do you think about that? That's number one. The number two, when you talk about appropriate training, what does it entail in terms of guidelines? Are we looking at the number of hours a player is training? Are we looking at what is entailed in that?
Okay. The cool down, there is no need for you to do some runs actually after a very heavy match. Actually now the muscles are already warm. You just need, actually when you do something heavy, it means again still you are like taking it up, and we want to cool it down slowly. So what are we doing that?
Isn't that the mental toughness we're talking about? That when they are tired, you push them again for more runs, because now you're working on their mental toughness.
That's more on training. But after the match, what do you want? You want the guys to recover, stretch it out, and they relax. So there's no need of, again, pushing them after a match. But if that's after training, that's okay. That's part of conditioning. But if it's after a match, you should not do that. You should actually let the muscles cool down as you jog them around, or you do a cycling session, then you go into stretching. But if that kind of runs goes back to your training, then that's okay. And you should be having a target. Why are you doing the runs? Are you doing it for cool down, or you are doing it for condition purposes? Are we there, Mary? Then,
yes, thank you, much appreciated.
For the appropriate is always design your training, okay, appropriately, so that when you are doing something, if you are doing contact training, is contact training. If you are doing your skills, it's your skills. And another thing is on the techniques. Which kind of techniques you are doing, then they are appropriate. Another last.
Lamech, just quickly, one comment. I always get scared when people talk about mental toughness. Just something that us as coaches must be very careful of is when you do what you call a mental toughness session, we must remember that it has a serious effect on your S&C coach. It has a serious effect on your player loads and your chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
And that's just something that we need to be aware of. I've heard it the last few weeks, a lot of people talk about mental toughness and physically drilling in discipline. The problem is you've got an S&C session, and then a coach goes and says, all right, now we need to do discipline. So run 3 kilometers. The thing is that it does more damage than it does good as well. So it's just something we as coaches need to be careful about as well.
That's why what I learned, that's a very good question actually. That's why we want session plan. Sessions plan are very key. So as a coach, make sure that you have talked with your SLC, even your physio, even your team manager. This is what we are going to do this week, and you have broken down. It's not a day, boom, people are doing a breakdown. And the physio is not even prepared even to make sure that there is an ambulance somewhere. So we need also to know, because SLC might be planning that today I'm running my guys, I'm covering this kind of road, then the coach is also has his own things he wants also to cover. So if you are not on the same page, then you hear the players complaining, the coach is bad, SLC is bad. It's because the session was never planned. Also, the physio may be never planned also to massage the guys maybe after. Yeah. So it's always good that a session plan comes out for the week. People know on like for sevens, we know this day is red. Everyone in the morning comes, Lamech, I want my wrist strap. Today is bad news. Even their mentor is prepared that things are going to run. They have what the SLC is going to cover. They is going to do 120s, 100s. They know there is work there. Then the coach has said, I'm going to do some drills. Then from the drills, tackling, then I'm going to some breakdown. So people are mentally prepared for that. So session plan is very key. And let it be shared as early as possible so that people know this is it.
I have a request, Lamech and Malik.
Yeah.
In terms of loading, if you are in season, what kind of loading is appropriate, and especially for women, noting that most women start playing rugby at a later age, let's say around probably in their high school years. They don't start earlier, and they actually play harder when they come to club national team. So in terms of loading, how are you able to balance it so that the players are not worn out?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Now, Moto, are you there? Really?
Moto is it?
Yeah, I want Moto also to come into that, because that's a very good question for a strength and conditioning coach. You know,
yes, Mr. Lamech, I can hear you.
Yeah, Moto.
I can hear you. Sorry, I had a bit of issues with the internet. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, now Mary, you can come up again. We want Moto to hear that question.
Okay, what I'm asking Moto, I'm asking about loading, because from what Lamech, the physio, was saying, the SNC is planning this, the coach is planning this. So let's say we're in season, we are doing, let's say, our 10-a-side league for the women's. So during the week, what kind of loading is good? What kind of loading is bad? How do you work out the loading sessions for the players, for the women's players specifically?
All right. Okay. Very good question. Yes, Lamech?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, good. So thank you, Mary, for that. All right. Thank you, Mary, for that question. Now, what I know is that when you are in season, and I know for ladies, we have always been having our tournaments on Sundays. Now, in terms of being, I mean, when you're preparing when you're making your plan as a coach going into the game or a tournament day, you're supposed to, maybe you can, because they're playing on Sunday, so that means that possibly on Monday, you just give them complete rest. Then on Tuesday, you can load on Tuesday or on Wednesday mostly. Then you do tappering, or you reduce the weight load as we head into the game, on Sunday. But most likely loading is always good pre-season, so that during the season you just maintain, just do something like just to maintain on what you are, maybe what you are doing on that. Sorry, I joined a bit late, and I'll also like Mr. Hector. I know he's a good SNC as well, to jump in and maybe help me in terms of that.
Yeah,
Hector, please.
Comment. No, I agree with Motto 100%. You need a full plan, whether it's men or women. I don't have much experience in coaching women, just a little bit of netball, and different coaches have different things. For me, I prefer high intensity Monday sessions after a weekend. That includes your flush out. For us, it seems to work. What is very important though is that you constantly compare your loads to your chronic loads, if that makes sense. So it's one of the most frustrating and boring things is keeping track of player loads, because every single session, every single player needs to give you a score. And when you're running a club like Harlequins or Homeboys or Impala, you've got 3 to 4 teams. You know, that's 120 players that you're looking at. And you've got to take a load of every single player for every session, gym session, field session, matches. And then while you've got your individual session loads, you've got to work out your chronic loads, and then compare them. And then obviously before you do that, you need your predicted loads. So when you do your planning for the week, you need to predict how hard your sessions are going to be as you build up to your match. And then obviously you need to then speak to your players individually and get their actual RPE scores, and then compare it, because different players react differently to different training sessions. And that's why it's important to look at it from an individual perspective. I know it's a lot of data, I know it's boring, but it is the safest way to look after your players, because you could have players that after a session that you think was a difficulty of 6 out of 10, and he comes to you and he says, "Coach, that was a 9 out of 10." Then all of a sudden the alarm bells have to go off, and you have to tell yourself, whoa, something's not right. Either the session was harder than what I planned, or my player, him or herself, is fatigued. And that's why they're perceiving the session harder than what it should be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have to look at it from an individual perspective. That's why get your TMs to do it. Me, I've given up doing it after a month. Now my TMs, they give me all the scores every single session.
So for Ocheng, Mary, I think the rodding applies both for men and women. It doesn't really differ. It depends on what you are actually going to do, what's actually planned. If it's a competition week, you have actually to bring down the load. And if it's training sessions which there is no competition, then always you can up your load. So it's more on what's actually going to happen next. That determines also your role and also your targets. So session plan,
yes.
What's going to happen next is very key. And
yes.
that's a good, yeah.
Yes, sorry to cut you short. Just to pick on one important issue that Hector raised there. So when, as coaches or as SNCs, when we are planning these sessions, assuming that, I know for men, we always have our big matches on Saturdays. That's why Hector always have the tough days on Monday, because they have a rest on Sunday. On Sunday. Now for ladies as well, their tournament days are always on Sunday. So maybe you can give them a rest on Monday. Then on Tuesday, you take them, full on. But again, the main important thing that you're supposed to consider is you're supposed to individualize this training. Don't just say everybody has to give me. If, you expect maybe 80 to 100% from everyone. Remember, during the game, if you, assuming that you had a game, maybe that weekend, the weekend preceding the conditioning, maybe there are those players who played for women. I know it's always, let's say, 5 matches minimum. So if this particular player played 5 matches and you didn't sub this player, possibly he gave you more than maybe what the other people gave you. And maybe a level will not be the same as another person's level. So what you can consider is, instead of having a uniform session for everyone, there are those players who can come to you and say, "Coach, hey, today nimechoka," or "Today maybe I don't feel like I can give you 100%. Maybe you can work on something. Maybe you can give that person a rest. Then you take it up with them or with that the following day." So as you work on these SNC sessions and everything, you're also supposed to consider the individual needs. How many tackles did this person make? How many runs did this person make? So that, or also, you look at the injuries. If somebody got an injury, don't force that person to do the SNC sessions. You might need, when you are forcing this person to do the sessions, you are going to injure this person more. So you can give that person some more time to recover before you can bring him on board. Thank you very much.
So the last one I wanted to say on that same point is that coaches, have your session plan, okay? And it's good that your stakeholders have it. Mostly the players, if you want everything to move smooth, so that they know this is what's going to happen. Another thing, separate contact training from skills training. It's always, coaches are always mixing it. You want people to pass, kidogo kidogo, you want people to sweat, kidogo kidogo, you want people to pump each other. So when it's more organized, things move actually more nicer. And the last one on the road, there is a research actually I've been involved in, where people are doing what happens if we play on Saturday. If teams are playing Saturday, what's the earliest time of recovery do you want them to start training? Or when do you want them to start a recuperation period? So the research was put into 2 groups, and it has been done for a longer period of time. So there is a high confidence interval in between them, nearly of 95%. That the teams which rested for longer period of time, maybe up to Wednesday, then they started training to compete on the other weekend, they never recovered. But the team which played on Saturday, rested Sunday, Monday they came in, they did some recuperation exercises, something to keep the blood flow, some exercises, a bit of gym. Then on Tuesday they rested. Then they hit the gym. They hit the road on Wednesday. They had more recovered. So much of the players want to sit until 3-4 days before they want more rest. And the research has shown that it's not going to give you anything. So the area, the better. The area the movement starts, the area the training starts, the better the recover. So that one, I think with time, you guys now, you can start putting it in. Even if they are not doing too much, but the area, the better the movement for recovery. Another?
Yes, Steve. Lamech, thanks. That was a great presentation.
Yes, Kennedy, yeah?
Yeah, that was a great presentation. At least from now on, we are going to work for a long time as a traditional approach. It has always been injury prevention and management has always been left to physios and the medics. Recently, we started cooperating the SNC coaches. So at least it's very good to incorporate the coaches since they know the basic of the injury. We can prevent it from the technique, tackling, and even running in space. So if we do most of these things oftenly and we work as a multidisciplinary, where even after the COVID issues, apart from Zoom, we meet in a room where there are medics, coaches, and SNC, I think we'll be heading somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, Lamech.
Yeah.
Just to add on what everyone is thinking of, you mentioned that we need to do some injury prevention mitigations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, last year, World Rugby brought in a new course, a new model, Activate Injury Prevention Program, and I've sent to everyone the link. And we shared this widely. I don't know how come guys don't know there's something happening about the prevention. So I believe this is a tool we can use.
Yeah, actually, what I'll propose, every coach who is on board, we can start going through the Activate exercises, which World Rugby has come up with. Even FIFA, the football, they have their own 11 plus exercises, which they conduct. That's what their warm-up is very specific to football. And they go through the 11 exercises. That's why they call it FIFA 11 plus. Even from heading, from all those kind of things. So we need to implement ours because they have implemented theirs very nicely. So coaches, get into the World Rugby website. Let's go through the Activate. Let's master those exercises. Let's start to implement them now. So that anytime you go anywhere, those are the exercises being done in rugby. That's the same thing they do. Anytime you go to a football team, those are the exercises. I've been to 3 professional teams, and when I saw what they do, everything is nearly the same. Even how much the training session is, what they do is nearly the same. So we need to get into rugby, that somebody walks into rugby and he can identify that this club is doing nearly the same thing. In terms, and those are in terms of not about what you do as a club, but in terms of player welfare and injury prevention method.
Lamech, I've put on the chat, I put 3 books down that I think will be very helpful to all the coaches when it comes to screening, movement screening, and mobility and flexibility. Those are books I also used when I was studying. So just for the guys, if they're looking for something to research, The titles are in the chat group.
So I think, Marek, you have recorded the meeting, yeah? So you can share.
Yes, yes, the meeting is recorded.
So that the guys can check all those presentations. But if you are there, you can copy paste it to somewhere so that you can always go through it whenever. Everyone is running. Every day you learn something new. So it's a wrong process.
True.
Anything else?
For Jason, just send the book. I'll share with everyone else. You send the link
on the Zoom chat.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you open, maybe you can share with them. So I'll share the two researches which have been done, so that you can be able to go through them.
Then we can upload together with the link for this meeting.
Yeah.
So.
Now, thank you guys so much for attending. Really appreciate. We should be able to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Lamech, for your time. Thank you, everyone else who showed up. Very informative information, Lamech. And asante sana. We keep the chats going. So we'll try and organize for the women, and I believe we should also organize for the school teachers, which will be a big help to them. Na tupatane tena. Sasa, asanteni nyote.
Thank you guys. Be on the lookout.
Thank you, bye.
Asante sana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep safe. Be safe, people.
You too.